Hi guys, welcome to Fascinated by Fungi Live. Today I'm going to be interviewing Alexis Nikole, our Black Forager. She is an incredibly vivacious, alive, entertaining, wonderful human being who has made a name for herself teaching people about foraging. And I know that I've learned a lot from her, and that was the genesis of me wanting to have her here on live, was to have a great discussion, hoping that you guys could learn from her too. And it's just really exciting to be able to do these kinds of live events, and I'm hoping to have a lot more great guests. So definitely let me know if there's people you'd like to see me talk to. But I'm going to get Alexis on. Hopefully, she'll have some cool stuff to show us. I know I got a few things to show and tell as well. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. How you doing?
I'm doing so well. I am coming to you live from a dock in the Kennebec River.
That's amazing. I'm glad that we could connect on and do this, because in the age of COVID, things are complicated, but I feel like being able to go live and chat in real time is exciting. And I would say that you've had a meteoric rise to prominence, to fame within the foraging community. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background, because I'm pretty sure you like Google stalked me, so you figured out what I was all about. But
Gently, but I'm still going to ask you questions anyway.
Yeah, please do.
And also, yeah, I think everything that you do is awesome. And I have so many questions about your PhD studies and everything, but
we can get into it. But yeah, tell everyone about yourself, because honestly, people are more interested in you than me. I'm sure of it.
Stop it. Incorrect, because that is not true for me. Hello, everybody. My name is Alexis Nikole, otherwise known as Black Forager, here on Instagram, as if I am trapped within this phone realm you are all seeing me inside of. And I eat food that doesn't belong to me. That makes it seem like way more of a crime. I forage. I practice.
You're more like the Robin Hood of food, no?
Exactly. Don't tell the city of Columbus that. It's a secret.
Yeah. Although I think a lot of the things you eat are usually invasive species, often enough, right? Yeah.
So I have been high-fived by a couple of park rangers for gathering garlic mustard out of our national parks. It's a sneaky minx, and it always shows up at like the entranceways to parks because people will track it in with their shoes. But sometimes I gather cool native plants too. I grabbed some samples because Gordon was like, I have samples. And I was like, I have 5 minutes before my partner's mom is putting dinner on the table. So you guys will see what I could grab in mid-coast Maine in 5 minutes.
Excellent.
Yeah, I've always loved wild food ever since I was a kid. My mom's really into gardening, so I grew up learning about the weeds that were and weren't useful and the plants that were safe and not safe, and kind of started putting together myself what families they were all in and what similarities each of those families have. And I went to a very environmentally friendly elementary school. We started taking botany classes in like 2nd grade.
Okay, so you've been familiar with plants for a long time.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. For me as a kid, I spent a lot of time with my head in the spice drawer in the kitchen. And I was very into the idea of I should be able to identify spices and herbs by smell.
Yes.
And that went hand in hand with then being able to identify those things in the garden. And,
exactly.
Smell, flavor, leaf morphology. And you learn a lot of those small things about just, hey, what does a piece of rosemary look like? And I can tell you, I've had several house guests over for dinner. And I say, oh yeah, go in the backyard, grab some sage. And they come back after 10 minutes and they're like, Gordon, I don't know what sage is. And I'm just like, ugh. But,
and you're like, no.
It's like a basic life skill.
It is. And it's crazy because, and I have a lot of questions about this for you, but for me, since I've been learning plants from such a young age, like my mom started quizzing me on plants in her garden when I was like 1st or 2nd grade. for me, I sometimes feel like I know and recognize plants better than I know and recognize people.
Well, there's more distinguishing features, right? I mean, humans are all pretty much the same. You can't really key them out that differently. They all look basically the same.
Exactly. Whereas like with plants, I can look at a plant and be like, okay, I at least know what family you are, chilling with. And then we can figure out the rest of the details from there.
Well,
Ooh,
sometimes plants are as much as like, hey, there's little hairs underneath the leaf or something like that. You look at a human, you're like, I could have a beard or no beard, and you look very different. So, right, that things change.
exactly.
Plants are
I have
consistent in that
braids
sense.
right now. I don't always have braids.
Yeah.
I could look like a completely different person next week.
Yeah, the braids are nice. I saw that. It was, your normal hair is pretty awesome, but the braids were a good addition. It's nice summer look.
I mostly, I love my hair, but it feels like wearing a hat that you don't have the option to take off in the summer.
I know I mean, right now my hair is longer than it normally is, and I'm going nuts with just this like weird stuff in the back that. Although I don't have quite the same volume as you, so it's less like a hat and more just like a thin film.
Just like a tickle on the back of the neck.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
But what about you, Gordon? How did you get your start in the realm of all things foraging, but specifically mycology?
Mycology, right? Mushrooms are what's the interesting part.
Oh man, I love mushrooms. I think they're so interesting, but they don't like me back, and that's fine.
Have you had a bad experience eating one, or is it just not even able to find them? Or
I'm just horrible at finding them. So bad at finding them.
I mean, as a kid, I had a couple experiences that very much crystallized an interest in mycology. I found like a giant puffball with my mom one day when I was like 5.
Wow.
And I still remember exactly where it was. I've gone back many times to check the same spot. No dice. But, my mom had enough basic myco knowledge to know, hey, this puffball is edible. Let's take it home. And I'm very food motivated. I don't know if you've seen my cooking stories, but I'm very food motivated. So having
I hear that and I feel that.
Yeah, definitely. Having that memory of trying this sort of marshmallowy steak stuck with me. We had another thing where we had a stump in the yard my dad wanted to get rid of, and he called some guys to have them come say how much is going to cost to get the stump out. Way too much money. So he's a microbiologist. He said there's got to be a better way, and he found that you could buy chicken in the woods plug spawn online. So I remember one year we went out and drilled some holes in this thing and kind of tapped them in and forgot about it for a whole year. Nothing happened, ignoring it. And then one day I came back and was like, Dad, what is this crazy orange thing growing out of the stump? He's like, oh, that's chicken of the woods. And I put it there so I know that we can eat it. And
your dad was on to what everybody in like COVID times is now getting privy
now
to,
trying
this
to do.
art of growing mushrooms at home. That is amazing.
So, I mean, that was just luck that we happened to get some plug spawn and it worked. And I think about 2 years, we got some chicken in the woods, and that really stuck with me. But then I turned, and I think too, we had some honey mushrooms that came out of a dying apple tree that probably got killed by the armillaria. And we got those ID'd and ate them, and they were tasty. And then I became a preteen and a teenager, and I forgot everything about mushrooms and didn't care, and immediately was like, Mom, that's not cool anymore. Leave me alone. Clearly I changed my mind at some point.
Yes.
So it was a couple years ago. We were in New Zealand, and I just kind of got restarted because I was bored, and I started looking for mushrooms. And I think I'd been really interested through a lot of grad school and a lot of college. I went to Santa Cruz, great mushroom place. But I was always intimidated because I was like, I don't know what to look for. I just don't know. And I hear that all the time. People are like, I don't know where to start. And the ultimate thing I can tell anybody is, I'm sure you can too with fortune, is just go outside.
Yeah. Just start.
Exactly.
I always tell people, literally, like, go into your front or backyard and take your phone with you and go back inside when you have identified like 3 of the plants that aren't grass. And you're already on your way.
Do you have a favorite, because I get asked a lot, but do you have a favorite mushroom, or sorry, not mushroom, sorry, ID program of some sort? Everything goes through the lens of mushrooms with me, but.
I love iNaturalist.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
totally.
The one that I love pointing people towards. That one's also so great for looking at the Explore interface on it. And then you kind of get to like cheat the system, and maybe for your first foraging experience, it's not you looking at something and identifying it. It's you seeing on a map where something is. Then using your eyes to match what you see on the screen instead of the other way around. It's great practice. What about you? What's your
I
favorite?
mean, I use iNaturalist as well. I've tried a few other things, but iNat was the one that it had the best sort of picture identification stuff, and I
Mm.
liked the community. I liked the explore features. I wish the app was as functional as the desktop version, and I'm
Same.
hoping at some point to push Cal Academy to get somebody to, we got enough smart designers in San Francisco that somebody should be able to make it work. Um,
Honestly, I'm surprised someone hasn't just made it their pet project to make the UI better at this
Yeah,
point, but
seriously. If anyone's
someday,
listening and knows computer programming, please talk to us, talk to iNat, talk to California
please.
Academy. It could be so much better.
Yep.
I have a question for you because you're
Yeah,
in Maine right now. You are
I
living the East Coast summer life that I so desperately miss right now because I couldn't
am.
go home this year because of COVID. Um, did you scope out what was there? Did you go on iNat and give it a little look?
Oh, you know that I did. So my partner's parents have a house in Mid-Coast, Maine. And so, of
Hmm.
course, the second we knew we were going, I was just like, okay, we're going and we're looking on iNaturalist. I'm going to see all of the pictures that were taken during the month of August, so I know what's in season right now.
Hmm.
And so sometimes we follow those. Sometimes we just wander. Oh, Starseed Nutrix is in Maine. Hello.
Yeah.
If you're in Mid-Coast, Maine, please come hang out. I will make you sweet fern tea. It is very pleasant. So of course, yeah, I absolutely scoped it out. And here we're very close to Bath, and there's like a subculture of other cool plant savvy, as my
Mm.
mom calls them, crunchy folks here and in Portland. So a handful of people have like made it their duty to just ID everything
Oh, nice.
in
Yeah,
the
that's
area.
that's great. Well, you can tell that when you have an iNat area that's inhabited by the people who really use it. And usually people have a focus. So it'll be like, oh my God, there's like hundreds of photos of birds here. There must be an
Birds.
avid birder nearby kind of thing.
This is Birdland. Everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, look, an osprey.
And of course, we all know that birds aren't real. They're just drones
No.
sent out by the government. Yeah, that's just
So
want
we're
to
just
make that
looking at
want to make that clear. But
different models of government drones.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, a
Got it.
bald eagle was sitting in the tree in front of the house
Really?
for like an hour today, and I was like, oh, that has to be a government spy. Come on. It's a bald eagle. Be more subtle. Be more subtle.
So I gotta ask. I think you've accumulated a good following on Instagram, but you've also blown up on TikTok. And it was funny because I scrolled back a little bit in your TikTok history and was like, okay, clearly you were making a different type of video, and then you found your niche. And there's something sort of engaging about TikTok when you get your niche because you're like, oh great, I got like 10 views and 1 like, and then suddenly you're like, how did I get like 100,000 likes? How did that feel? What was that experience like for you to just be like,
It's
does it make sense yet?
wild and crazy. So for years, for my day job, I make content for another company. Like I'm the
Hmm.
brainchild behind a company's social media content, so I know the space.
Okay.
But I'm very used to not having my name on viral content.
Right. Or
that
your
I have
face
a hand
necessarily,
in.
the picture of
Exactly. So it was really weird. Because at first I was just like, yes, look at the notifications. This feels good. We all love a dopamine hit.
yeah,
But then it
those little
started
red
sinking
bubbles
in.
popping up and you're like, oh yeah, look at it go.
Yeah, you're like, oh, wow, cool. It's like I'm logged into one of the company accounts. I love this. But then it started sinking in that like my face was attached to it. It's wild. It's wild. And TikTok is just like the wild west of the internet right now. So
It is. And it's its own special demographic. I was sort of looking at this the other day and I was like, okay, I have a fair number of followers across a couple different platforms. So like Facebook is primarily people over the age of 40.
Yep.
Instagram is very much it's millennials, my demographic. And then TikTok is Gen Zers and it's funny because you get this glimpse into what Gen Z is doing. And I feel very much like an old person when I look at that because I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt like an old person when I was in college and I made a reference to the Chris Farley sketch about living in a van down by the river. And like, it was just crickets in the room. And I was like, what?
No.
But yeah, I mean, TikTok is amazing. And I in some ways, I'm really excited about it because we get a chance to talk to younger people and we get a chance, I think you and I and many other people in this online education space get a chance to be the voice of a generation. We get to be that next set of people that are listened to about how to interact with nature. And I think because of that, it falls to us to be responsible, to teach people the right way to do things. And I'm sort of wondering if you have any tips for people about how to be like a good nature conscious forager when you're out there, and especially when you're learning and you're new to it.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because I also had questions about this, because I feel like, especially with mushrooms, there are a couple different rules that you have to think about in terms of making sure that spots continue to fruit year after year. So I'm holding on to that in my head.
Yeah,
so
yeah. I'll bring it back to you.
So I have a couple like rules of thumb that I like to give to people who are getting started. Some of them are for their safety. Some of them are for the safety of the area that they are foraging in, because you want to be a good steward of the land. So for the sake of people's safety, always look out for like swaths of discoloration or monocultures, because then odds are some sort of herbicide, some sort of pesticide has been used in that area. Here in Maine, they have a horrible Japanese knotweed problem, and you can see a hard line in the big, throngs of it, where the spraying stopped. It'll just be like very shriveled, very discolored, and then suddenly you go back a couple more feet, and they're beautiful, and you can just tell, oh, the sprayers only got so far in this, dense shrub. So always be on the lookout for those things, because those are grade A tells that those are plants you should be staying away from, and that you should be giving it a wide radius.
Yeah, you don't want to eat the knotweed just outside of the dead zone, like, go 50 feet away and find some. And Japanese knotweed is one, I grew up with it because I remember it was invasive on the East Coast, and we used to pick sticks of it and kind of like have sword fights, and your sword would break, you grab another one, you go back at it. But I've also heard that it's actually a pretty good edible when it's young. You can almost eat them like bamboo shoots or something like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. They're fantastic. I mean, my first video that like blew up on TikTok was me making sorbet out of Japanese knotweed.
Oh, cool.
And everyone was just like, what?
What?
That plant that my parents have hated for years and years and years could be made into a tasty treat. It's like, yeah, it can. Which brings me into my next thing, and that is prioritize invasive species, because when you are prioritizing them in your head, you also have to get creative with how you prepare them, because you are going to get so sick of just knotweed shoots in a butter sauce after like 3 times of having them. And those are the kind of things that make me go, this is sweet and tart like rhubarb. If I can make sorbet with rhubarb, I bet you I can make sorbet with knotweed.
Right. And that's a great point with any cooking thing, is if you can find something that fits a general profile of something, look up similar recipes and try substituting. And that's exactly what you can do with foraging. And same thing with mushrooms, all sorts of stuff. You just slot them into whatever you're making, and probably works as long as there's some components in common. So
I don't know if you have the book, The Flavor Bible, but I do. And I will just, it's so good for that. Just flipping through and being like, this kind of tastes like cantaloupe. What goes with cantaloupe? And then you have this huge list of things to try that you may not have thought of previously. That was me with mimosa blossoms a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that. You made lemonade. You do all sorts of stuff with those, right?
Oh, yeah. And that's another one that's really invasive, especially in the southern United States. And they make a huge mess. They're beautiful, but they are messy. So your neighbors will let you take their flowers if you just like knock on their door. That's another thing I wanted to tell people, is if you're going to forage out of your neighbor's yard, know your neighbor's name first. Please.
It helps.
Talk to people. I hate it too, until you get to know them and you get to talk about like something you're really excited about. And that's great.
Do you get stopped ever from when you're out foraging? People saying, "What are you doing? Like, why are you in this bush?" Like.
I am so proactive if I'm anywhere near anyone's property about being like, hello, my name is Alexis and I come in peace. I am from the internet. I don't have time to explain, but I see you have this invasive plant in your yard that you are not using. Can I take it off of your hands for you?
Quick follow-up question. Do you have stickers yet?
No, but I need to. Okay. I need to work on them.
Yeah, someone who's listening now, talk to Alexis and like either get her to design, push her to design a sticker, or offer to design a sticker for her, because I can tell you there is no quicker way to kind of like set a discussion than to be like, look, you don't have to say I'm famous online. You can just say I have an account where I look at foraging, and you hand them a sticker and they go, "Ooh, cool, stickers." because people like, no one wants a freaking business card, but everyone
No,
wants
but
stickers,
everyone
and you
wants a
hand it to
sticker.
them, and now they know about you, and that way if they ever see you again, they're like, oh my God, you're that person, please come take all my weeds. And you're like, I don't need all of them, but okay,
And you're
thanks.
like, I don't need all of them, but I will take some of them. Thank you. That is genius. And now I'm going to look into stickers when we are done with this call.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
I think my last tip for being just like a good, respectful forager is it also has to do with being cognizant of your surroundings and not decimating a population. I know in the Northeast and in the Midwest, ramps are a huge deal in the
Yep.
early spring. You're finding them less the further east that you go. Part of that's because of the restaurant industry and because people are being very overzealous with their gathering. And I'll still see older folks in like the Facebook foraging groups being like, oh, well, take like 1 in 3. And I'm like, that is how you literally decimate a population. Like, that is how you make sure that this is going to be gone completely in like 10, 20, 30 years, depending on the size of the stand. I like to keep it under 1 in 10 because you always have to think about, well, if it's with at-risk species. When it's with invasives, I will gather invasives without abandon, or things that are extremely plentiful, like violets, like seaweed. Literally, I have like a stand of bladderwrack just drifting by me on the river right now. And I'm like, oh, I could take that whole handful and not feel a twinge of guilt and not have made the littlest impression.
Well, and it's already disconnected from where it was anchored anyhow.
Exactly.
So, you know, you're not you didn't pull it off necessarily. You're just taking advantage of the fact that it's out there. I think that's a really good point, because everything, and you were asking about mushrooms and what guidelines, you know, I would follow. And again, that it sort of falls to what type of mushroom is it? How rare is it? Are you in an area where that kind of mushroom is protected? I know that lion's mane is very sexy. Everyone loves lion's mane.
Yes.
I can find it, quite a bit of it here in Napa. We have a lot of dead and dying oaks, and there's quite a bit of white rot fungus. So there's lion's mane, there's other hericiums, and I don't feel bad harvesting them. But I know that in the UK, lion's mane is very endangered. So you're not even allowed to touch it. And I think that has less to do with human harvesting and more to do with habitat loss, which is generally the biggest thing with any of these species. It's not always human intervention that's causing the loss of it. It's just the complete loss. It's the fact that you bulldoze the forest and put up a Walmart, you know. It's not because Betty was collecting a few too many ramps. It's because there's no more forest. That being said, stuff like ramps can definitely be impacted by human behaviors, as can mushrooms. But in a very similar way, I think that being a good steward of the land includes try to stay mostly on the trails. Try to never collect all of the single mushroom in one area. You know, if you have older specimens, you have younger specimens, leave them. It's like, you know, there's, when you go fishing, you shouldn't take the largest fish, you shouldn't take the smallest fish. Take the ones in the middle, let the genes spread. Definitely with stuff like chanterelles, there's some rules about you should really leave like 50% if you can. I've been guilty several times of getting excited and just picking the mushrooms that are there. But that being said, a lot of the mushrooms that we collect end up being mycorrhizal mushrooms. So those are mushrooms that have their mycelium sort of connected to the tree roots, and they're associated with those trees. So the actual body of the mushroom is underground, connected to that tree. And there's a huge debate in the mushroom community between what's called pluck versus cut, as I'm sure you've run into at different points. And I don't have strong feelings about that. I will sometimes cut a mushroom. If it's like buried really deep and I don't want to get my hands super dirty, I'll just cut it right off, take it. Good to go. Other times, I want to actually kind of see how deep it goes, or I just, you know, I will unroot it, but I'm doing it fairly gently. And then when I get that, I'll take what's the stem butt part that the mycelium connects to, and I'll trim that off and put that back into the hole I found it, and then cover up the whole thing.
Nice.
And that's a really good practice, because even if you're not cutting your mushroom, and trust me, I get lots and lots of comments on my videos telling me I'm a terrible person because I've plucked a mushroom instead of cutting it.
Everybody's a critic.
Yes, exactly. And I want to get into that too, but you know, you trim those butts off, you put them back in the ground, because stem butts can in theory regrow mycelium, and then you cover that whole hole back up. And that way you're not leaving mushroom dreck all over the forest floor, which is bad etiquette. You don't want to you want to leave the forest look as untouched as possible most of the
Yes.
time, which I think you know, because nothing is more disconcerting to be on a hike and be like, oh, I'm like, have this feeling of exploring. I get to be the first one here. And then you run into something where it's like somebody ate an orange and their dog pooped here and they kicked a mushroom. And you're just like, oh, okay, well,
you're like,
someone's
oh,
been
cool.
here.
Well, nice. Exactly.
Yeah. Avoid destroying stuff. That's a great guideline.
So many rules that I'm like, oh, right, that is a thing that you should still like say to people. Because in my mind, I'm just like, I'm tiptoeing through the forest. No one's going to know that I'm here. But that is not how everybody moves through the woods.
No. So yeah, it definitely pays to, try to just be wary of stuff. And a good point is mushrooms, I guess when you pick them, mushrooms are more akin to like a fruit in that they are the reproductive body, but they don't constitute the whole mushroom. So picking a mushroom does not kill the mycelium below. Again, if you leave the hole open, let it dry out, that could negatively affect the mycelium. So your practices do matter, but harvesting a mushroom is inherently fairly sustainable since most mushrooms will fruit and go away within a couple of days. And what you can do if you feel bad about it is you can do a couple of taps on top, release some of those spores, carry, I have a friend who like tucks morels in his hat when he walks around, so he's spreading spores. He'll take his like big thing of morels and put it on the top of his car, so when he drives he's like Johnny Mushroom Seed everywhere.
Genius.
It is, and actually that was Damon who I talked to on my last thing. Damon he's all sorts of good recommendations about things like that. But so a question you brought up, everyone's a critic, right? And I'm sure you've run into this in many ways, but there's a phenomenon on the internet known as gatekeeping. And gatekeeping is people letting you know that they think that you're wrong about something and that they know the right way to do it. And I find this really funny because I get people gatekeeping me on mushrooms and I'm like, did you look at my account? Do you,
right? Like, do you know where you are, friend?
Yeah, and it's not like I know everything. Honestly, I am very new to mushrooms. I still feel like a complete amateur, but I do my reading and I look at multiple sources and I try to find a couple of things. And usually when I'm posting information, it's stuff that's been vetted from at least a couple of sources that seems to make sense. And yet some people are coming to me and telling, well, this is poison. This one's edible. This one you can't do. That one, it's just like, I don't know how to deal with the gatekeeping, but I, as a white male, am relatively confident in just being like, I'm right, and you can take it as you will. But I have a feeling that you have probably run into the fact that people have said some pretty mean things to you, potentially. And how do you feel about gatekeeping? And I guess because you have such a positive and beautiful attitude, how do you keep that? Because I get torn up inside sometimes, and I try not to let it, impact me. But what do you do?
Great question, because it gets me down sometimes. If you ever see me like disappear from the comments for a couple days on TikTok, it's usually because someone came in and it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I get so many questions about like my credentials and how I learned everything that I know, and like, what did you study in school? Like, do you have the right to be telling people this? Or my favorite is just like little tiny like
microaggressions.
But earlier today someone was just like, you didn't tell people that Queen Anne's lace has a purple flower in the center, and the flower you showed them doesn't have a purple flower in the center, so what flower is that? And I was just like, if you looked at the video, I put a note. Not all of them have it, and it's a horrible tell to teach people because not all of them have it.
It's not consistent.
It's not consistent across the species. Please don't tell people that is the be all end all. I usually just have to like kill them with kindness, which is easy because that's my default defense mechanism.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's the best thing you can do to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Is just be as honest and straightforward and try to be nice about it, even if they are not being nice about it. And it's usually after I've had an exchange of like 3 or 4 comments where someone is still being aggressive or mean that I'm like, okay, I didn't want to block you because I don't like blocking people, but I will block you because you're being really, really rude. And often enough, I don't know if you've experienced this, but those profiles tend to be empty.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe a picture of a dog or a truck or something. There's never a person's face. They're not giving you, you're not having a person-to-person discussion. Someone just wants to correct you. So
Sorry if I'm swatting. A
oh yeah,
mosquito has decided that my phone is actually very interesting, which I'm glad it thinks my phone is interesting and not me.
yes, that's
It
good.
could certainly be worse. But yeah, it's rough. And the thing that's been getting me down the most lately is less like the kids on TikTok being critical, because honestly, whenever younger people are just like, oh, well, I had heard this about a plant, I'm like, this is a teachable moment. Like, let's sit down and talk about that, and like where you learned that. And for so many of them, it's like, oh, with their parents, they didn't know anything about plants, so a really easy be all end all is anything that looks like X, don't touch or eat, because then you never have to worry about your kids maybe getting into something that they shouldn't have.
Yeah, speaking of which, so many people do not know that mushrooms can't hurt you. From touching them.
Yes.
Touching a
Yes.
mushroom cannot hurt you. And
Cannot
so
hurt
many
you.
people's parents have don't touch mushrooms. Those will poison you. And so that's like one of the most common pieces of misinformation.
Yeah.
Unlike plants though, however, there's plenty of plants you can touch that will really mess you up. Really
Yes.
badly.
Oh my gosh, the amount of people on the hemlock video who were just like, my parents definitely had this growing in our backyard, and I definitely touched it, and now definitely know where I got this one random rash from as a kid. I was like, yeah, they have some pretty sick defense systems. And when you learn why they have those defense systems, I feel like you respect them a whole lot more. But it's not fun when you're on the receiving end. But lately, the critiques that have been getting to me the most is when I share my videos in some of the Facebook groups. Older, especially white male foragers, do not like my content. They do not like it at all. They will tell me I am too in your face. They will tell me I should not have my face on screen. They will tell me that me like singing about things is kind of trivializing them, instead of being like very cool, calm, collected, Ewell Gibbons doppelganger in everything that I do. And that's just so not me. I have never been that person, and I don't think I will ever be that person. So that hurts really badly, because that's not
it's a personal attack.
Thing. It's a personal attack.
It's a personal attack. It has nothing to do with what the information you're trying to share. And that's, I guess that's one of the hard parts, is trying to do this and trying to be one of those voices of this next generation, is that we deal with detractors. And how you deal with those detractors, I think, says a lot about your character and the way that you have dealt with that, and just the positivity, the energy, the singing, your enormous infectious smile. I think, like, girl, you keep doing you, like, do not stop. And there's so many people that are going to buy into that and identify with that. And I think for me, it was sort of a similar thing with mushrooms. I have not faced quite as much criticism. I get the occasional jab for looking like Prince Harry or some other, everyone thinks gingers look alike.
Which, like, not
okay,
a bad jab.
No,
not
even
a jab.
I used to be, as a kid, I was very self-conscious about it and kind of offended, but now I'm like, he's great. You call me Prince Harry all you want, that's fine.
Exactly.
I will take it. Okay, so I have a couple of mushrooms here that are just like stinking up the table, and I want to show them off to you.
I'm so excited to see what you brought.
So I went up a couple of days ago to the Mendocino coast, and it's very dry still here in California. But one of the things you get in late summer is there's quite a bit of fog, and the drip from the fog will provide enough moisture to allow some things to fruit. So a very like standard thing that everyone's probably seen at some point is just one of these polypore conchs. And so this is a kind of Ganoderma, sometimes known as like an artist bracket, because you can like draw on this surface. And these I always feel bad about knocking these off, because like these fruiting bodies can last for years and years and years and years. So really, if you see these and you're not going to take it home and do something with it, leave it alone. That's good mushroom etiquette. Leave these poor polypores alone.
Never be the person who takes something home, takes a picture of it on your kitchen counter, and then posts in an ID questioning group, what is this and what can I do with it?
Which, I mean, for some mushrooms, that's okay, because that mushroom was going to mold anyhow, but these things will last for years. So I'm planning on doing some art on this, which is why I picked this one. But you can also see with these guys, they've got a little like ring of white stuff around the outside, and that's the active growth zone. So that you can tell whether or not something's actively growing if it has like a white ring. And so several of the polypores there was enough moisture deep in the stump to keep it growing. Another cool one I found is this, and I don't know if you recognize this. This mushroom grows on the East Coast, and up until now I never actually found it in California, But this is, I don't know if you can hear, nice little thump to it.
Oh, listen to that thud.
This is Tapenella atrotomentosa, otherwise known as the velvet roll rim or the velvet-footed pax. It is not. It has been changed. It's not a paxillus, but it has this very sort of fuzzy, velvety base on it. Thus, the velvet foot. And it's toxic. It's not a good mushroom to eat at all, but it smells awesome. It has these really gorgeous creamy gills and like kind of nice texture. So I was excited to find this just because it's a pretty big mushroom and it was an exciting one to find. I'm hoping to dry it out and possibly see if people can dye with it, because I have a feeling that maybe there might be some pigments that could be liberated from this. And then I guess I'll show you this. There's a piece de resistance, and I'll tell you this. I got an extra iPhone so that I could use it to take time lapses while I'm walking around the woods. Because often enough, I'll put my phone down to take like a time lapse of a slug, and then I'm like, oh crap, now I can't take photos. So I'm just like waiting for this slug to like crawl along. So I got another extra phone. I set it up to like try to take a time lapse of a slime mold, and I was like, okay, I'll just do a little like circle loop and come right back. I walk out. I come back. No phone.
Uh-oh.
And I start going, I just left like several $100s of like camera equipment in the woods. Where is this? So I start like running around like crazy and realize that someone was like, okay, Gordon, stop, set a marker on your phone and start like, I used to do scuba. So I was like, channel my scuba days. I got to go back and like go out and back, do circular radial patterns. And eventually I did find it. And the key thing was to find a piece of dog poop that I'd poked before, landmarks. So I was like, I know that dog poop. And then I was able to find my phone. But in the rush of running around and being like, oh my God, I lost this thing, I found a cauliflower mushroom.
It's
a
beautiful.
Really beautiful, wonderful smelling cauliflower mushroom. So
that is one I'm actually familiar with. So I'm so excited you brought one that I know.
So cauliflower mushrooms are great. They're brown rot polypores, and they're on the East Coast and the West Coast, except on the East Coast, there's two different species. And I think it's Spiraceus crispa and another one. And this is the West Coast version, which is Spiraceus radicata. So this one's great. You can use it like noodles and all sorts of, great elements in any kind of dish. So that was, and then also when I got home, I live close to a whole bunch of eucalyptus trees. So I went and found a little bit of chicken in the woods.
Nice.
Which actually your chicken in the woods video that you shared, where you make Alexis makes an amazing like foraged barbecue sauce, which I don't even know half the things you put in there, but I'm gonna ask you at some point to send me some spice berries, because I don't know what the hell they are, but I want them. Yes. I will send you mushroom powders. It'd be a good exchange. I'll send you some stickers.
Absolutely. I can send you dried green ones and dried red ones, because they taste very different from one another.
That's amazing. I'm so excited. But so the mushroom that you used there was actually sometimes they call it crab of the woods, but it's the Latiparus cincinnatus as opposed to Latiparus sulphurus. And I'm sure you figured that out after the video. But
after I did, it was confusing because I flipped it over and it was still yellow on the other side, because I had originally thought it was cincinnatus. And I flipped it. I broke off a little piece with my knife and flipped it over. It's like yellow was not the color I was expecting.
Yeah. And that's that's a good point.
I
like,
was just
even people
excited
who are
to find it.
experienced. Yeah, no, exactly. But you should don't trust too much in morphology, because you can see a lot of different morphologies within the same thing. And again, I don't love ID books, because you get one picture and that's it. It's like looking at this poster behind me. It's a great poster, but if I had to identify every single one of these mushrooms from this one picture, you wouldn't see what a small one looks like. You wouldn't see what an old one looks like. You wouldn't see when they're under different environmental conditions. And so that's what I love about social media and Instagram and iNaturalist. You can look at so many photos.
So many different variations.
Yeah. And that's so good, because just like with your Queen Anne's lace, you can't reliably say that there always will be a purple flower, but you look at enough of them and you're like, okay, I have a pretty good idea what it looks like. I've created like a visual fingerprint of how to recognize this. So
yes, that is such a good way to describe it, because once you really have a lot of experience seeing a plant from like infancy all the way through its life cycle, you will always be able to ID that plant. You'll be able to ID it from far away. Like I can drive down the highway and my partner hates me because I'll be like, oh look, elderberries. Oh, trumpet vine. Oh, Queen Anne's lace. Oh, poison hemlock. I am unbearable to be in the car with, I swear. Oh, 3 mosquitoes. No, shoo shoo. Shoo shoo, get out of here.
Do you frequently ask him to like just pull the car over and like pause? Yeah.
Not when we're on like the highway.
I try
not to do that. But if we are just like buzzing around the city, fine mosquitoes, maybe I have to go to the screened-in porch because I don't want to bother my partner's family. But I also was like, outdoors is way more authentic. Also, look at how pretty it is.
Yeah, I'm glad I got you with a little bit of the light there and like on the water. It's so beautiful.
You can also now see all of the mosquitoes.
Yes, I could see them buzzing. Yeah, they look hungry.
I know, and I'm just like, guys, get out of here. I also keep getting so excited by the things that you were showing that I keep shaking the dock. So we're gonna go and walk up the dock walkway now, away from the mosquitoes, also away from the seaweed. I was hoping I'd get to be like a really cool marine forager.
Well, I was gonna say, but before you go, do you want to show me something? If you have seaweed there, let me get a look, shake it around for the camera or something.
Okay, I will put my things down and I will go back down the dock for the sake of foraging Instagram.
Yeah. Also, while I have you, and don't feel any pressure, but you have some of the best pipes I've heard anywhere on social media.
No.
By all means, please feel free to sing me any scientific name you can think of at any moment in any time. And you can even
any that I can think of.
Even on Instagram, if you ever just want to like send me a random voice message where you just sing the name of a scientific name of a thing, I will be incredibly tickled.
Oh my gosh. And now, of course, you say that, and like every single scientific name has left my body. Like a ghost. It has exited my brain. I'm standing near a bunch of sweet fern, and I literally kept repeating the scientific name over and over again this morning just because I like saying it. And now I'm just like, no, it's gone. Goodbye.
It's okay. And that happens to me all the time. People ask me, they're like, because I feel very self-conscious about ever like hosting a foraging thing or something like that, because that same thing happens to me. People be like, what is this? And I'll just like freeze. I'm like, I don't know. I knew 5 minutes ago. I'll know 5 minutes from now, but I don't know right now.
Oh, so out of the water, I just pulled out a little bit of bladder wrack.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nice edible. The little bubbles in it, I'm trying to see if it's bright enough that you can see any of the details on it. It has a little midrib, which is a good way to tell the difference between this and egg rack, which it is normally found with. Okay. They are both same genus, different species, both a brown algae. The little bladders on this pickle super well. You can also just dry the whole thing and use it as a spice, but I do that with most seaweed.
Do you dry them, powder them, and then add them to stuff?
Exactly, and then add them to things. Or just dry them in sheets and put those on top of stuff. I just dried some sea lettuce and put it on a DIY pizza a couple nights ago.
Nice.
Just for a little umami, a little salt.
A couple years ago, I was home a couple years ago and found, went out and just did a little like quick dive and grabbed a bunch of seaweeds in my hand, took them home and kind of washed them and ascertained that most of them were probably edible, and just made like a really quick sort of Thai dressing and like dressed up a Thai seaweed salad kind of thing. So that's so many things that are easy to eat. You don't need to do that much to them. Just, as long as they're clean, there's no sand in it, you're good to go. Exactly.
Yes. Always give your seaweed just a quick dip. Definitely. Just a little one. When you get home, you will thank me, I promise. And I've been getting a lot of really great questions about seaweed, and they're just like, oh, well, if you're not here most of the year, like, how do you know which ones will and won't hurt you? Well, as it stands right now, and of course, the second I say this, someone's going to discover one that proves me wrong. There aren't any toxic seaweeds. They're just ones that have textures or tastes that are like not something that you would want to be eating, or not something that you'd want to be using as a seasoning. I'm out of breath from like sprinting up the hill from the dock. Everything's going so well, and this is not at all embarrassing for me.
You're great.
But yeah, and now it's dark. Dang nabbit. I'm just gonna stand under a light.
Yeah, it's all good. We got enough time in the sun there. So what are some of the things that you have found that you're excited about while you've been in Maine? And what are some of the things you haven't found yet, but that you're still looking for?
So let's go and bring some things out of my bag.
All right. Show and tell time.
I know. I love show and tell time. It's going to sit crisscross applesauce on the walkway here. There is a chipmunk that lives really close to where I'm sitting, and he's probably livid with me right now. So, really? A truck on this dirt road right now? I'm the luckiest person.
It's okay. Well, my partner's about to walk in, so she'll bang around a little bit too. So I'll have some background noise here too.
So here is sweet fern.
Okay.
It is
Sweet fern.
Comptonia peregrina.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Jeff. Now my partner beat your partner to walking into the chute. Hello, Jeffrey. It is an electrical utility vehicle.
Ooh.
Wow. Yes. Great timing. There's Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeff. I'm trying to see if
hello.
Jerry's walking. She's got big bags of grapes. She's been doing sampling, so she's probably squishing the grapes up to take sugar samples.
Does she make wine?
She's a viticulturist, so she works for like a vineyard management company. So they
That's so cool.
Yeah, it is cool. She goes around, she looks a lot at like plant diseases and insect things and helps make decisions about irrigation, all this stuff, and harvest decisions and that kind of thing. So it is excellent. But Napa is in many ways one gigantic monocrop. And so there's issues too with that type of farming. As romantic as it is to see a vineyard, you're like, oh, it's not actually the healthiest ecosystem.
You got to have lots of different plants growing in an area. I'm trying to shake the mosquitoes away with sweet fern. It's not working, but that's what I'm holding.
Cool.
Right here is
what
sweet
can
fern.
you do with sweet fern? What is sweet fern?
So it has these really delightfully aromatic leaves, almost like aromatically like a sweeter cinnamon, in my opinion. I love making a sun tea with them. Honestly, you can just drop a sprig about this size into a mason jar full of water, put on the cap, leave it in the sun for 2 or 3 hours. You'll have a really nice tea that you can sweeten or ice. I have friends who use this in meat rubs. I am painfully vegan, so I guess I could use it for like a tofu or a seitan rub. I also love infusing it into simple syrups and using it in coffee. That is so good.
That's killer. I really like that. That's a great idea.
It's fantastic. It makes for a life-changing foraged latte in the mornings. So this guy, we have him I see him every once in a blue moon in the Midwest, but he loves the sandy soils of the Northeast. So you will see this guy just hanging out along the river's edge near brackish water because it's one of the plants that can thrive there. Yeah. What else do I have in here? Oh, I got some rose hips. They are not beach rose hips, which is what I was wanting to show off, but they're still pretty chunky.
I grew up as a New Englander making rose hip jam with my dad.
Yes.
And let me tell you that is an ordeal. There's a lot of seeds in rose hips.
Oh my God. And you can't eat the seeds because that is an ordeal. Not when you're eating them, but the other end of the eating dealio, it's a bad idea. I'm not going to say why because I think everyone can get to that conclusion on their own.
So that's actually a good question. I think another one of the favorite questions people love to ask me and seem very disappointed by it when I say no is, have I ever gotten sick from eating a mushroom? And I'm generally pretty careful. Even when I'm trying a new thing, I try very small piece. And that's the same kind of ethos you should take if you're trying new plants. You don't know how your body's going to react. So always try just a small piece, give it like an hour or two, maybe wait 24 hours, see how you're going to react. But have you tried anything that made you feel a little weird? Or, I mean, ideally not like explosive stuff, but
no. So I've never had anything that has made me like ill to my stomach. Thank goodness. I thought I was allergic to autumn olives a couple of years ago, but I think what it was is that I just ate one while I was still too early in its growing season, and the astringency like took all of the moisture out of my mouth, and I was like, this is some kind of reaction, and I don't want it.
Well, yeah, your mouth feels kind of like, if anyone ever had like an unripe persimmon or something like that, it just chaps your, it's like red wine times a million. You're like,
and it almost feels like your mouth is numb. It almost feels like an allergic reaction. So I was so bummed because we have a ton of autumn olive in my neck of the woods. And I was like, oh, cool. I guess I just have to miss out on this amazing jelly crop. That's fine. And then my partner was just like, okay, try like a skin test. Last year, we tried it, no reaction. And it's like, okay, try just like giving yourself a little taste. Tried, no reaction. Ate an entire berry. I was like, oh, this doesn't taste like it is draining the life force from me. So there's that. Always try things in small quantities. That is like
Yeah.
People have asked if I've ever accidentally like confused an edible for a non-edible plant. And the answer is yes, once, but I would never eat something in a high enough quantity for the first time for it to affect me. Don't always do this, but sometimes a tell is like if you touch something to your tongue and it tastes bitter in a way that is not palatable, odds are it is bad for you.
It's bad for you, yeah. And that's the same thing goes for mushrooms. People always ask, like, I post so many pictures of mushrooms. Like, can I eat that? Can I eat that? And most things I'm like, this is like microscopic or like, like, why would you want to eat it?
Exactly.
But, you know, I usually say, like, smell it. If it smells good, maybe consider eating it. You can take a little bite of a mushroom and without swallowing it, you can very quickly tell, is it going to be bitter, hot, acrid? If it tastes any of those things, it's probably not a great edible mushroom. And it's totally fine to just leave things in the woods. You know, not everything has to be, I think viewing things through the lens of human experience, things either have to be edible or poisonous. And there's no in between. And like the majority of plants and fungi and other things are they just exist. They weren't made for us. They're not edible or inedible. They're just what they are. And you could probably eat them, but if they don't taste good and there's no redeeming factor, why?
Exactly. Like, even some of the plants that are dangerous won't be dangerous in like small quantities because we're not what they were designing those defense systems for. They were creating those for insects. They were creating those for small mammals. Like I was telling people, if you were to, like, say, eat a single seed from poison hemlock, like, you are not the animal that is designed to kill. But also, like, don't do it. Because why? just don't do it.
Yeah. You can take a bite of a toxic mushroom and spit it out and be fine. Yeah. But don't do it. It's, unless you're showboating, you really don't need to do that.
And on the other end of that spectrum, like, there are plants that are still slightly irritating to us that we buy in the grocery store, like freaking parsnips. If you come across those in the wild and handle them on a sunny day with your bare hands, if you have sensitive skin, will absolutely get a burn from the same parsnips that you're buying in the grocery store. But some of our plants, you need to know how to approach them. You need to get to know them like you would get to know a friend.
Yeah, well, and mushrooms are very similar. It's like the same sort of approach works because you just need to learn how to prepare it. And I think people are very used to the idea of, hey, there's certain ways to prepare a vegetable that makes it safe or makes it edible. And the same kind of thing with mushrooms. There's some mushrooms that would be poisonous, but if you boil them a couple of times in salt, salted water, they're totally edible. And that's, there's a lot of mycophagy that happens in Eastern Europe and China of species that we consider completely inedible here. Yeah. Even toxic or poisonous, ones that send people to hospital when they try eating them. But because they process them differently, you get a very different outcome. And it's the exact same thing for plants. And there's so many more plants that are potentially toxic, but we've learned how to process them and we eat them and we enjoy them on a daily basis. Stuff that you don't even think about. So.
And we're so willing to go through a lot of rigmarole for plants that we're used to and familiar with. But it sends up a lot of red flags when it's a plant that people are not. Like, I know pokeweed gets people all up in arms in the spring because they're like, you're telling me that plant that last summer was 8 feet tall and completely toxic in my yard at a younger age I can eat. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, oh, but I have to put it in a change of boiling water first. I'm like, yeah, but like any of your frozen veggies have also gone through a round of boiling water before getting frozen. You will be fine. I promise. I'm slowly being eaten alive by mosquitoes, but this light is like too good to pass up.
Yeah, well, don't worry. We will run out of time shortly, and what I want to do is actually have a chance to say goodbye to you because the last few times I've done live things, it's been like conversation and done. And my mom kept texting me and be like, Gordon, you have to learn how to time manage better so you can actually say goodbye. And I was like, no, like I want to talk to this person so much that I don't want to waste any of this on fluff. I want to just actually get into it with people.
Also, are our moms the same person?
You know what? My mom's probably watching this now, so maybe, who knows? And I'd love to I'd love to get some questions too. But I mean, the other thing is that I love talking to the people that I'm interviewing, and frequently the questions are good, but they're sort of simplistic, not always. But I think that sometimes we can have a discussion that's a little bit more interesting overall. But So yeah, someone had said no purple flowers in the Queen Anne's lace, so you're definitely vindicated there.
Yeah.
Someone was saying they can't believe someone would ever doubt your foraging credentials because like clearly you're amazing. So that's just what it is.
Thanks.
Someone's gonna show us to their mom. That's great.
That's delightful. Oh my gosh.
Oh, so someone says here, you're singing about foraging and is amazing and a wonderful gift. So don't ever give that up because that is truly special. In fact, actually, I don't know. There's a woman on TikTok named Grace Hayes. She's on Instagram too, but she's made sort of a bigger splash on TikTok, I guess.
Mhm.
And she does some
I
really
feel that.
fun kind of like ukulele banjo songs and stuff like that. And I feel like if you and Grace could get together and sing, like, I mean, you could probably sing a whole song about foraging yourself, but Grace has a flair for like fun lyrics and adapting things. But
I
I don't.
need to look her up.
Do
If
you
she
have
plays
any?
the banjo, I'll bring my ukulele or my keyboard, and we can make this happen.
Do you have any kind of like upcoming foraging projects or new types of content or anything that you like want to talk about or like use as a platform to express here?
Oh my gosh. The worst part of this is the answer is like not as much as I should.
That's okay. I mean, it's totally like you said. Like it takes time to get stuff like stickers and figure out a
Yes.
website. And like I said, your rise has been meteoric, and I have no doubt that in a couple of months from now, you will have like 1 million followers, and you'll have a blue check mark and all this stuff. So it's
It's crazy because as you said with my TikTok, like for a while I was kind of trying to play by TikTok's rules, and
yeah.
because I also do comedy and I also work in marketing, and for a really long time those three facets of my life were completely separate from one another. But I've been foraging since I was a kid. I've had my foraging Instagram for like well over a year now, and I was like a survivor camp counselor working my way through college during the summers. So it's just like really wild that me being my like the most authentic version of myself and kind of letting everything come
Just
together,
putting it all out there, right? I mean,
and just being a loud nerd was the thing that ended up happening, but I didn't expect it to. So I of course like wasn't planning for it at all.
Yeah, you weren't planning to get famous. I guess I meant to ask you earlier, has anyone recognized you in real life? Has that happened?
One time. It has happened once. I was at the farmer's market near my neighborhood in Columbus, talking to an old work acquaintance I hadn't seen in a while. And someone came up to me, and I had my mask on and a giant sun hat on and everything, and was just like, "Are you that loud girl with the plants from TikTok?" And honestly, put that on my tombstone. Loud girl with the plants from TikTok. There it is. Signed, sealed, delivered. It's never gonna. The description will never get sharper than that.
That's amazing. Well, and that's a perfect example. Like, here's a sticker.
Yeah.
It's a gracious way to say thank you. I appreciate you recognizing me.
But what about you, Gordon? Because you have been at this and in like the foraging, like internet, social media space for longer than I am, and I also am like in awe of how much content you crank out, because for me, oh man, I have to sit on an idea for like a week or two, like storyboard it out with horrible doodles of myself before I go and shoot everything. Like, one, how do you do it? Two, have you been recognized in public?
I've had a couple of people recognize me, farmers markets and a few other things, and sometimes it's happened like out in the woods. Someone's like, "Hey, I know you. You're fascinated by fungi." I'm like, "Oh, cool."
That's
thanks.
the best place to be recognized.
Exactly. That's where I want to be recognized. I don't necessarily want to be bothered if I'm at the grocery store, but like out in the woods, great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I do it. I guess I just kind of take a bunch of photos, and it's usually when I make my posts, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like blurry eyed. And usually if you pay attention, what I post, I'll post the first thing when I wake up, and then like an hour or two later, I'll go back and fix all the typos that are in the post.
You and me both, like both with the like late night / early morning posting, and with the going back and being like, "You guys let me call it Easter red cedar for 3 whole hours before somebody said something to me. Guys, I thought we were friends."
Yeah, but I mean, I think you very much like me probably get off on the community and the feedback that you get, and just the amazing, what you said earlier, a loud nerd. I think that is, in some ways, when I talk about being the voice of whatever this is that we're doing, that we're promoting, being naturalists, that we're promoting foraging, that we're promoting being stewards of nature, we get to be loud nerds. And for once,
Yeah.
I'm not being made fun of for it. People are still making fun of me. That's fine. But
Yes.
people are getting excited about us being loud nerds. And I think
Yes.
that is just so perfect. We're going to run out of time here in like 15 seconds, but I just want to say thank you so much for being here. And maybe you can just
for having me. I feel like we could do a whole nother one.
Exactly. And maybe we should. But do you want to sing us a note on the way out? Just